Just need a place tonight? The Apache woman said, never knowing the rancher would marry her. Snow fell across the high valleys of Arizona as the winter moon pushed through clouds like a watchful spirit. And in that dim, silvery light, a lone Apache woman stumbled through the drifts, her breath breaking, her body wrapped only in thin scraps of clothing that did nothing against the cold. Her name was Naira, daughter of a once proud healer who had been taken by fever, and now hunted by men who wanted her land treaty or her silence. The storm bit at her skin, but she kept walking, carrying nothing except the memory of her mother's final words. Run to the mountains. They protect those with clean hearts. Her legs nearly collapsed as she reached the outline of a distant wooden cabin, a faint warm glow leaking from its windows like hope calling her home. She pushed forward, feet sinking deep into snow, and the moment she reached the porch, she knocked once, twice, before the door swung open to reveal a tall rancher with a weathered face, dark beard and eyes that held years of loneliness, eyes that widened in shock at the sight of a half-frozen woman trembling on his steps. "Ma'am, you'll freeze to death out here," he muttered, slipping off his coat and wrapping it around her shoulders before she fell forward, nearly fainting. "Please," she whispered, her voice thin but steady. "I just need a place tonight." Something about her tone, a quiet strength beneath the exhaustion, cut straight through him. He was a man used to solitude, used to cattle and cold winds and empty nights, not strangers collapsing into his arms. But there was something about her that pushed past caution. He lifted her easily, carrying her inside to the warm fire crackling over split pine logs. As he set her down on a chair, she shivered violently, snow melting off her hair, long braids falling over her shoulders. He heated water, made broth, and wrapped a thick blanket around her like she was made of glass that could break at any second. When she finally spoke again, her voice steadier, she told him her name, where she came from, and the danger that had driven her into the storm. He listened without interrupting, something few men had ever done for her, and, though few words passed between them, an unspoken pull grew in the small cabin, a silent understanding as warm as the fire between them. His name was Cole Turner, a rancher who had sworn never to get involved with anyone, again after losing his wife 2 winters earlier. Loneliness had carved lines into his face and taught him to live with silence. But watching Naira fight to stay awake, watching the way she clenched her jaw as if refusing to break, something stirred inside him, something that felt dangerous and familiar at the same time. He offered her a place to sleep, but she refused the bed, insisting she would take the floor. "A guest doesn't sleep on the floor in my home," he said firmly, his voice carrying a protective edge she hadn't expected. She met his gaze, saw the stubbornness in his eyes, and realized he wasn't a man who said things he didn't mean. As she sat near the fire, Cole handed her a cup of warm tea, his fingers brushing hers, and a spark shot through them, both an unexpected warmth cutting through the cold that had nothing to do with the flames. She looked up at him then, her eyes softening, her breath steadying, and he found himself caught in the intensity of her gaze, the silent stories hidden behind it. "You don't owe me your story," he said gently. "You just rest. When morning comes, you'll tell me what you want." But morning came sooner than either expected, not because of sunlight, but because of danger. Just before dawn, a distant shout echoed outside, the sound of horses cutting through the quiet valley. Naira jolted awake, fear crossing her face so sharply Cole felt it in his chest. She whispered, "They found me." Cole didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, stepped in front of her, and said with a voice that could split the mountains, "Not while you're under my roof." She stared at him, shocked by how easily he claimed her safety as his responsibility, how fiercely he stood between her and danger, without knowing anything except that she needed help. Something inside her shifted in that moment, trust, unfamiliar yet undeniable. He didn't know it yet, but this one night would change everything. She had walked to his cabin only wanting shelter. She had expected warmth, maybe kindness, but marriage, a future, a man who would stand against gunmen for her. That thought had never crossed her mind. Not yet. But destiny had already taken root between them, and the first threads of a bond that neither expected were already tying their hearts together. And as Cole stepped onto the porch, shoulders squared, rifle steady, Naira whispered to herself, "Why would a stranger protect me like this?" She had no idea that the man facing danger for her, the man who offered shelter without hesitation, would one day offer her his name, his home, and his heart. Gunfire cracked through the early morning air, echoing off the snow-coated pines as Cole Turner fired warning shots into the sky, his boots planted firm on the frozen ground, while Naira crouched inside the cabin, clutching the blanket he'd wrapped around her. The men who had been hunting, her ruthless trackers hired by a corrupt land agent, pulled their horses to a stop, unnerved by the rancher's unflinching stance. Cole's voice boomed across the field, steady as thunder. "Turn back while you still can." They hadn't expected resistance, much less from a man who stood alone, with nothing but a rifle and a fierce determination burning in his eyes. The leader shouted back that the woman belonged to them, that she had information they needed. But Cole didn't move an inch. "Nobody belongs to you," he growled. "And she sure as hell isn't leaving with you." His fearlessness shook them more than the gunfire. Men like that expected easy victims, not ranchers ready to die for strangers. After a tense standoff, the trackers rode off, vowing to return with more men. Cole re-entered the cabin, cheeks flushed from the cold, breath heavy from adrenaline, and Naira looked at him as if he were something impossible, something she had only heard about in old tribal stories where warriors protected the innocent with their lives. Her hands trembled as she touched his arm, whispering, "Why did you do that for me?" Cole hesitated, staring into the fire before answering, "Because no one deserves to face danger alone." The truth was deeper than he admitted to her or himself. Something about her presence, the quiet strength in her voice, the way she fought to survive even when frozen and exhausted. It woke the part of him that had been numb since his wife's death. Over the next few days, as the storm worsened and the threat outside grew sharper, something unexpected blossomed between them. Naira helped him with small ranch chores, moving with grace despite the cold. Cole cooked for her, taught her how to move quietly through the snow to avoid leaving tracks. And every evening they talked beside the fire, about her people, his past, their losses, their scars. The cabin became a world of its own, where danger existed outside but healing lived inside. It was Naira who laughed first, surprising them both. It was Cole who smiled next, a real smile he hadn't felt in years. And slowly, day by day, their hearts began to knit together like threads of two broken blankets sewn into one. But danger wasn't finished with them. One night, just as the fire was dying, the sound of horses returned. Many horses this time. Naira froze. Cole grabbed his rifle again, jaw tight, but she put a hand on his chest and whispered, "This is my fight too. I won't let you stand alone." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not a frightened woman but a warrior with courage burning inside her. He nodded, and together they stepped outside. The trackers demanded she surrender. Cole stood beside her and declared, "If you want her, you take me too." What happened next felt like a scene carved into destiny. The Apache warriors from Naira's tribe, alerted by a message she had secretly carved into a tree days earlier, swept out of the shadows like a storm. Arrows flew, horses scattered, and within minutes the trackers fled into the woods, defeated by a force they never expected. Naira's tribe surrounded her with cries of relief, yet her eyes were locked only on Cole. When her people asked her to return home, she hesitated for the first time in her life. She looked at the rancher who had risked death for her, the man whose home had become her refuge, whose presence had become her comfort, and she felt a pull stronger than duty. When the tribal elder asked, "Child, where does your spirit wish to stay?" Naira turned toward Cole, her heart pounding like drums in a ceremony. Cole swallowed hard, afraid to hope, and then, softly, she spoke. "With him." The tribe accepted her choice, knowing the spirit sometimes tied 2 lives long before the people understood why. When they left, the valley fell silent again, and Cole stood there staring at her as if he couldn't believe she chose him. "Naira, you don't have to stay for my sake," he whispered. She stepped closer, touching his chest gently. "I'm staying for my own." And in that moment, quiet, snowy, filled with breathless emotion, he realized he loved her. Weeks passed, and her presence filled the cabin with warmth he thought he'd lost forever. When sunset, standing near the old barn, Cole took a deep breath, hands shaking slightly as he spoke the words that had been burning inside him. "Would you stay? Not just tonight, but for the rest of your life?" Naira's eyes glistened like clear river water as she whispered back, "I asked you for a place for one night, but you gave me a home for a lifetime." They married in the valley where snow met the mountains, blessed by both her tribe and the open sky, and Cole realized destiny had brought her to his door the moment he needed her most. And she realized the spirits had guided her not to safety, but to love.